Hello everybody, this is Jordan from A State of Health, and I am here for to present you with the Herbs in Your Window workshop. This is the last video of our Earth Week series of fun events that involve getting out in nature and just getting your hands in the dirt, maybe picking up some trash or planting some trees. We also worked through some beautiful yoga practices and qigong to allow us to connect with the earthly elements around us and within us. So today I just want to give you a little bit of info about a few different herbs that are really common that you find in grocery stores or, perhaps in your kitchen window. So I'm just going to touch on a few of them here. I'll talk a little bit about some of their properties in terms of like medicinal goodness, as well as how to include them in your food for a little bit of a healthier and more delicious mealtime. So I've got the 6 herbs here. First I would like to talk a little about herb care. So when you get herbs from stores like your grocery stores or the greenhouses and nurseries, a lot of times they are basically as big as they would like to be in the size of the pot that they come in. So I've got a few different ones here. Now these are all from Cindy's in Kingsville, and they're really beautiful looking herbs. And I was pleasantly surprised too to find that they have an organic series of herbs as well. I wasn't able to find all of the herbs that I wanted that were in the organic section, but that's okay because we'll give them lots of really nice, good organic soil to use and lots of love to help take care of them and nurture them as they grow. So what you want to do is have a pot that is, these pots are maybe a little bit big to transition into, but if you look at your herb and you feel like the drip line of the herb, so say if it rained on this plant and the water was falling outside of the pot, then it's probably time to get a new pot, depending on the herb. But most of the time when you pick them up at the store, they're ready for letting their roots spread out anyhow. So if you can find it, you want to get some nice organic soil. And like a general all-purpose mix is fine. Most of the herbs that we use for culinary purposes are from the Mediterranean anyway, so they're used to having really difficult soil that's not very nutritious and has a lot of sand in it. It's very well draining, so they dry out very quickly, and I'm sure they would be happy to have a little bit more nutrients in their soil. So you want to just fill the base of your pot a little bit, but not too much because we don't want to squeeze the roots in there. So I've got maybe, about 2 inches at the bottom of this pot. I think this is about a 4 or 5 inch pot deep, depth-wise. And so when we're doing the transplant, we want to be really tender and careful with these babies because that's what they are. They're just little baby plants. So what I do is I usually take my hands and I put my fingers around the base of the plant. And that just holds the top of the soil in. We don't really want to lose any of the soil that they came with. And when your hand is on the top of the plant, then you can pop it over. Just give it a little bit of a squeeze around the base of the pot, and it should just slide right out. Now this one's in pretty good shape. This is really good timing to do a transplant because as you can see, it's not too root bound yet. There is a little bit of binding of those roots happening, but it's really early on, so it's perfect time for transplanting this plant. So what we want to do here is just really, really gently start to take the roots that are clumped together or starting to wrap themselves around the base of the pot, and we'll really, really softly just invite them to open up. So I'm not pulling and being really careful not to break anything. I'm just letting them spread out a little bit so that when we put them in the pot, they'll be able to spread out instead of continuing the cycle that they started on with spiraling around each other. Now sometimes when you buy your pots or your plants, especially a little bit later in the summer, you'll find them to be quite root bound, and like all the way around the whole root ball, you'll find their little white roots. Then you might need a little bit more care, a little bit more time to gently unwind some of those roots. But no matter what state it's in, we don't want the roots to be wrapping around and bound. We want them to spread out a little bit and get all those nutrients in the soil. And one way that you can tell if your plants are root bound and need to be transplanted, aside from looking at how big the plant is compared to the pot, when you're watering, if the plant doesn't seem to soak up the water, if you water and then it almost instantly all just drains out, that's a pretty good indication that you don't have enough soil to hold the water around the roots anymore, because the roots have completely filled that space. So that's another good telltale sign of whether or not it's time for a transplant. Okay, so now that I've put my plant in the soil, it's time to fill up around it. Now I'm going to be really careful. I don't mind putting my hands right in here, but you can also use a trowel. You want to make sure that whatever tools that you're using are clean. So that doesn't just mean there's no dirt on them. If you've been using it in the garden or for other plants, you might actually want to sterilize them just to ensure that you're not having any risk of transferring any disease from other soil areas or other plants. So I'm just going to do a few handfuls here around the base of this beautiful little sage. And voila, there we go. See, it's basically right in the middle of the pot. And a lot of gardeners will tell you to, press this down and really make sure that it's, nice and tight around there. I like to, if anything, just super lightly pat around the top, maybe giving a couple little affirmations or healing vibrations, like saying the words, "I love you," and "You're going to be well taken care of here. I'll take care of you and you can take care of me. We love each other and this is a happy place." And after you've done your transplant, you'll want to make sure to water as soon as possible. Woo! And try not to get the water all over yourself. Okay, and we'll just set this aside. So right now you might be able to see that the water is sort of just sitting on top here. That's just because this soil is really dry, and it's like a brand new situation where the soil hasn't gotten wet yet, so it hasn't sort of sunk into its space. There's a lot of air in the bottom, and that's okay. We're just going to let it drain through. So I'll put that one aside for now, and let's chat a little bit about these different plants. So sage, we'll start with sage because we just started with sage. Sage is a really, really nice herb, and it's pretty versatile. You can use it in your cooking, you can use it in teas, you can use it in salad dressings. I actually really, really love the taste of sage with mushrooms. So I often, whenever I'm doing a mushroom dish, maybe I'll take 1 or 2 leaves of sage. You don't really need a whole lot because it's got a pretty pungent flavor. And I just chop it up nice and fine and add it into my dish. When you're cooking with fresh herbs, you want to preserve all the goodness in them. So often I will just throw them in maybe in the last 3 minutes or so of the cooking process. That way you're just getting the aromatics of the herbs to really open up, and they might get slightly cooked, but for the most part they're still pretty fresh. That's the best way, in my opinion, to use fresh herbs, because you want to keep all those tendencies that or medicinal constituents. So for sage itself, it's a very medicinal plant. It can even be thought of as a bit of a panacea, which is the herbal term for, a cure-all. Now that being said, if you've got serious illness, you're going to need maybe more than sage. But sage it has antifungal properties, antiseptic, antibacterial, anti-inflammatory properties. Sage is also a carminative, so it helps to soothe an upset stomach. and it can be a stimulating tonic for the digestive system and for the nervous system. So when you're dealing with really high stress or adrenal fatigue, or you've just had a really rough week, and perhaps you're starting to feel really fatigued, maybe you're starting to feel really drained mentally and emotionally, oftentimes, whether it's from uh, the the top down or from the bottom up, when we're feeling stressed, our stomach and our digestive processes aren't ideal in their functioning either. So sage is a really, really good plant to have for either one of those problems, which tends to feed into the other one. So I love sage. It's a great little plant. And it's also been considered to be very sacred across a lot of different cultures, from Europe to South America, even in North American First Nations. We see white sage as a very, very special herb. Now, I do want to take a brief little pause here and talk about white sage. White sage is not an edible plant necessarily. It's very, very potent, so it needs to be treated with utmost care. Culinary sage is different. This is, food that you can have it every day in your meals, and there's no amount that is not safe. For white sage, it's not recommended that you actually eat it. The medicinal properties are quite strong, and you could have upset stomach, you could have diarrhea, things like that from it if you were to eat it. A lot of people, on the other hand, just burn white sage as a smudge stick, which is a really, really wonderful plant to engage with in spiritual ceremony. But I do want to ask you that if you are going to use white sage as a smudge, please do it very selectively. Use it rarely. Use it for ceremony of the highest intention only. It's not something to be used on a daily basis or just willy-nilly if the room smells a little funky. It is actually a threatened plant now. It's been very much over-harvested from its natural habitat, so we gotta treat it with respect. So we'll move on and talk about some of the other culinary and medicinal herbs that I've got here today. So, parsley. Parsley is another really fun one. It's a great little aromatic plant. Parsley is full of really good minerals and nutrients. So if you're feeling like your diet might be kind of lacking in the greens, or if you've been dealing with some digestive ailments and perhaps are dealing with malnutrition, if you find that your hair or your nails don't grow very well, or you've got like dry skin and a flaky scalp, parsley is a really, really good herb to start introducing more so into your diet. It also can be used in your food just for fun. I love having parsley as a bit of freshness that you can add to salads. It's really, really tasty, kind of as like even just on its own, as a refresher. It is also carminative, so it can help with the digestive process. So, when you go to a restaurant and you see a little sprig of parsley on the side of your plate, well, it's not just there for show. If you eat it at the beginning or maybe closer to the end of your meal, you'll actually be helping yourself out in digesting your food. So that's a really nice thing. Don't waste your parsley. It's great. Oh, it's also a diuretic too. So it can help like when you're taking it in tea or you're taking it medicinally. It's really beneficial to take a lot of water with it, but it'll really help to cleanse the kidneys and flush out and detoxify the body. Moving right along, who should we go to? Let's go to rosemary. Rosemary is so lovely as well. Now this is obviously a very aromatic plant. Even if you are nearby it and the wind just blows in your direction over this plant, you can really tell. Rosemary, as you can see, almost looks a little bit fuzzy. It's got a little bit of a stickiness to it. That's all good stuff. If you rub that or just brush your hands over it and then smell it, just breathe it in, this is actually really good for your brain and for your memory. So rosemary can help to improve cognitive function, and memory. So It's often not that a whole lot of people know about it, but before you're writing a test, or if you're studying, or you're wanting to learn something new, or even if you're just feeling like you've got a little bit of brain fog and you're not remembering things as well anymore, having some rosemary nearby, either just smelling it frequently or actually putting it in tea or in your food, can be really good for your brain. And of course, this is another Mediterranean herb, so it's great with so many different Mediterranean dishes. It's traditionally used with meats. And again, I'm a vegetarian, or well, I guess maybe a pescatarian. I do kind of eat that Mediterranean diet, so I love rosemary on mushrooms, on potatoes, um, and even on fish. It can be really, really nice. And it's another one of those herbs that kind of goes a long way. A little goes a long way. So when you're cooking with rosemary, if your plant is young like this, I'd say maybe take off the stragglers, the ones that kind of reach out into the distance, because when rosemary grows, it likes to be as a shrub. So it can start in your kitchen window. It might get a little bit bigger every year, and you might have to repot it every year. And eventually, you might actually want to put it right in your garden if you're living in a zone that is warmer than zone 5, which is what we're at here in Kingsville and Essex County. Rosemary can survive our winters here, but you have to also kind of bury it. Like, I don't recommend keeping your rosemary outside here, but if you do follow the right precautions. Hi there, sorry about that. We got disconnected for a moment. Okay, so let's pick up talking about thyme. I guess it was good timing because we're right at time. So this is a really lovely little herb, and this one likes to spread out when it grows. So you can definitely start it in a pot, and it'll probably fold over your pot and just kind of fill out in this nice little frilly mane. Which is just perfect. If over time you want to keep your herbs alive, and maybe you're running out of space in your kitchen window, this is another plant that you can put right in the ground, and it will survive our winters here. Now that being said, just like the other herbs, if you're gonna keep them outside over winter, and like I said, we're here in zone 5, so we want to make sure that we cover them up with lots of mulch to make sure that the snow doesn't settle right on top of them. So leaves and mulch or straw, things like that, to help protect them overnight are great. So thyme is another really, really potent medicinal plant. It's great for decongestion of the chest. So thyme is one of my go-to plants whenever I start to feel a cough or a cold coming on. And so what I would do with the thyme is make a nice strong tea with it, or even a decoction, and drink that in. Even just breathing in the steam can be helpful since it is such an aromatic herb. So it's also an expectorant, so it can help to get phlegm out of the lungs and make your cough more productive. So that's why we use thyme as our go-to when it comes to dealing with a cough or a cold. But thyme also has all the antis, as my herbalist teacher would say. She's got all the antis because it's an antimicrobial, it's got like lightly antifungal properties, antibacterial. So you can also use thyme as a wash on a wound. So if, say, your children were playing outside and they just scraped their knee, nothing too serious, well, you can make a tea with the thyme and wait till it cools, and then just use that to wash out any dirt and stuff like that from the wound. So that's our lovely thyme. And of course, it's another beautiful Mediterranean herb, so it's great in so many dishes. I particularly love thyme with carrots. I find sauteing carrots or roasting carrots with lots of thyme on them is super delicious. And I also like to put thyme in my salad dressings. You can start experimenting and playing with it. Making herbs more a regular part of every meal is only going to enhance your wellness and the flavors of your cuisine. So go ahead and experiment with it. Okay, let's talk about oregano. Oregano is another beautiful little herb that's from our Mediterranean area as well. So again, it's really used to, well draining sandy soil, but it does quite well in the kitchen window as well. So oregano is one of our super pungent medicinal plants. It's probably the best antifungal plant that I know of for sure. And it's also antimicrobial, anti-inflammatory, and it can help to soothe an upset stomach. So it's a little bit of a wonderful plant. I like to make oil that is infused with the oregano. So it is a tincture, but you can use it internally, you can use it externally as well. Now that's not using oregano essential oil, okay? It's a different thing. Please never use oregano essential oil topically, unless it's in a lot of a carrier oil, like another oil, and you just put a few drops in it. Otherwise it could burn. But what I'm talking about is taking your oregano plant, either fresh or dried, and macerating it or submerging it in olive oil, and maybe put it in a jar, put it in a dark place. I've heard of other people using it and putting it in the sun. I think that this degrades some of the qualities of the medicinal constituents, so rather keep it in a darker spot and just shake it every day. And again, just like, we talk to our plants. The more you talk to your plants, the happier they will be, and maybe the happier you'll be. I find it makes me happy. But so put your oregano in the oil, and then you can use this after about 2 weeks, maybe strain out the plant, so the actual material, and just put it right in your compost. And then you can use this oil anytime you have an earache. You can put a few drops in your ear. Anytime that you have like a tongue ulcer or a cold sore or anything like that, you can apply a few drops. And then if you have any issues with fungus, like athlete's foot, or any other sort of fungus that shows up on your skin, you can use this oil that has been, again, for those of you just tuning in, this isn't oregano essential oil, it's oregano oil. So it's been in the olive oil, and that's what's extracted the medicinal qualities. So it's a nice, safe way to use it. And then, of course, you could add that to your cooking, and that would be just delicious. So oregano is really good. It's a key for me in my Greek salad dressing. So I always put fresh oregano in my Greek salad dressing, and I swear that just makes it like the bomb. All right, so last but certainly not least, let's talk about basil. So I'm sure most of you are quite familiar with basil. It's one of the more popular herbs that we see in our grocery stores, and it's definitely one of the more aromatic herbs. Even just like waving it in front of me here, I am smelling the beautiful smells of basil. So this here is a sweet basil, or here, actually the tag here says Genovese basil. So I'm not sure if there's like a huge difference there. It's pretty similar, but you'll notice that when it comes to basil, there are so many different cultivars, and it's just a testament to how much we love basil. We've just discovered all these different forms of it that are fantastic and magical. So basil is so wonderful that you could seriously just pick it off the plant and eat it. Just like that. It's not so pungent that like it's overwhelming or super bitter. I love eating basil salads. So my husband and I have recently been talking about eating your herbs as salads, because if it's not too pungent that it's like overwhelming, then you're getting way more medicinal properties and qualities and so many antioxidants than in your regular like iceberg lettuce or things like that. Certainly if that's a little bit of a stretch for you to just eat your herbs straight up, Then add in some spinach or add in some, green leaf lettuce to make it a little bit more interesting or a little bit more tame, perhaps. The herbs are what will make it interesting. But one of my favorite salads or ways to use fresh basil in my cooking or in my meals is to have it with, I love, what's that melon? Honeydew melon? No, it's the other one, cantaloupe. Cantaloupe and feta and basil. Just drizzle a little bit of olive oil on there, maybe a little bit of lime, and that's it. It is amazing. So basil, as well as being a delicious herb, is also very nutritious, and it's got some medicinal qualities of its own. So it's also a carminative. So this is a fancy way of saying it will soothe your stomach. If you have indigestion, if you have difficulty processing different foods, adding some basil to your plate can help you digest a little bit better. And since it is such an aromatic herb, it can also be helpful for things like headaches and just sinus congestion. So if you make a tea with this herb and you just kind of smell in the aromatics of it, or like me, you just grab a leaf and sniff it, it can actually help to clear up some of the congestion here and make you feel a little bit more clear and at ease in your mind and in your head. Yeah, so that is a wrap, folks. That's our lovely intro to these 6 herbs to have in your garden. Talked a little bit about their medicinal qualities, a little bit about their nutritious deliciousness, and how to care for them. I guess one more thing I should mention is daily care. So we talked about how to transplant properly and get them set up. But ongoing, you'll have to look them over regularly, just making sure they don't have any disease or little bugs. It's commonly a problem that when you buy plants at nurseries, they've got aphids or spider mites, little bugs. So as soon as you get your plants, just look really closely at the base of the stem, start your gaze there at the base of the stem, and then follow that all the way up through the undersides of the leaves, just checking them over to make sure that they don't have any bugs. Now, if they do, if you see aphids or anything little creepy crawly on there right at the start, what you can do is make a mixture of soapy water, so not too much soap, but maybe 2/3 water, 1/3 vinegar, and a little bit of soap. And that's just like regular white vinegar. Mix that up and just spray it on the plant. You'll want to quarantine the plant away from any of your other house plants for a couple of days, really. I just put them in my bathtub and I spray them down, and then, you should be good. Now, after doing the treatment process, you won't hear it very often as something you need to do, but my personal preference is just to give them a little wash. So, I do it basically in the shower. I turn on my sprinkler really, really softly, and I just let some cool water sort of rinse them off. Especially because you're going to be eating these. You don't really want residue of soaps and vinegar on your plants, and we just want it on the plant long enough to sort of get rid of the pests and the little bugs, and then you want to give them the best chance that they've got. Normally out in nature, if you put your plants outside, the rain will help to do this. But if your plants are inside, say in your kitchen windowsill, then that's how I would suggest taking care of the bug issue. Herbs do like to be watered fairly frequently. I'd say make sure that the soil feels just lightly moister, if anything, before you water again. So you want to make sure that when you put your finger in the top of the plant, put it in just past your fingernail there, feel down and see, is it wet? Does it feel moist? If it's not, then give it a little bit of water. And you'll always want to make sure that the pots that you put your plants in have drainage holes at the bottom of them. So you'll just put a little plate underneath that. These little pots that I purchased here, there are a different system, and sometimes you can find these. I found these online, where if you put the base, you fill this with water, and then you put the pot on, the plant will gradually soak up and draw up the water that it needs. That's a really, really nice design. Now, because these herbs are so much smaller than these pots, like comparatively you can see, I wouldn't really use that function until they get a little bit bigger, because we want to take some time for their roots to grow all the way down to the bottom of the pot. But if you have that type of pot, that's fantastic. If not, don't worry about it. You just want to make sure that it has drainage holes underneath it. Oh, and ideal spots for the herbs would be in a south-facing window. You want to make sure that they get maybe 6 hours of sunlight a day. If your window is not facing south, but you've got an east or a west facing window, that's probably okay too, depending on how much foliage you have around your house to block all that sun. But please don't place your herbs in a north facing window. They just tend to not do so well there. So if you have an alternative, that's fantastic. If not, maybe just wait another month and then plant them right outside. Or if you are planting your plants inside today or like this week because it's Earth Week, then they'll be fine for about a month in a little bit less light. But when it gets warm enough, you can certainly put your plants right outside. And another kind of nice thing to note is just that nature really takes care of itself. So when you do have plants that are suffering with aphids or spider mites or something like that, putting them outside sometimes actually resolves the issue for you. Because when they're out there, there are other bugs that are the predators of the bugs you have on your plants. So spiders and ladybugs and wasps, you know, they're great predators for aphids and spider mites and those woolly, whatever those little bugs are. So there's a lot of benefits to just putting your plants right outside. And hey, there's a lot of benefits for you getting outside too. So just to wrap this up, I wanted to thank you all for participating in this whole week's worth of Earth Week events. And if you missed anything along the way, you can go to our website, astateofhealth.ca, and check out our events tab. There we have the whole week worth of the classes and events that went on are posted there. So you can find your way to our YouTube channel through that. Or if you're following us on YouTube, just go ahead and check out the rest of our videos. I want to wish you a wonderful day. And also, just last minute note, our garbage pickup challenge is continuing to the end of this month. So there's still time to win a free massage. So all you have to do is bring a garbage bag out with you on your next walk outside. Pick up as much trash as you can find and take a picture of yourself with the trash bag and tag A State of Health, and you will automatically get entered into the draw to win a free massage. And this is just our way of saying thank you for taking care of the planet and thank you for improving our ecosystem. All right, guys, so I'm gonna head out. Have a wonderful day. I'll talk to you soon.